Join me right now to continue our conversation about teaching children about racism, race, and social injustice is Denise Moore from Masters Touch Counseling Service. Good morning.
Good morning, Tracy. How are you this morning?
I'm fine. I told you you'd be back, didn't I?
Well, thank you for having me back. I really appreciate that.
Well, I introed it by how we're going to teach children about race and racism. A lot of adults need to learn, too. You are talking to 6 foot 4 inches of white privilege here, so I need to know how I go about it with my own children.
Okay. Well, you know what, Tracy? Let's talk about fear first. I think that we didn't mention this. I think racism is bred out of fear. So I think that when adults and children don't understand something or someone, they have a tendency to be afraid. So I think the first thing is to dispel fear in your children, and even in adults when people don't understand. So I watched a movie over the weekend called The Best of Enemies. It's with, I think, Taraji P. Henson. And it was a gentleman who was a member of the Klan, and she was an activist in her city, and they ended up being really good friends at the end, so that's a spoiler alert. But it taught about differences and how not to be afraid of differences. So that's where we start. We start with talking about what we're afraid of and why we're afraid of the difference in another person. So that's the first thing to begin with. And then we just simply sit down and have a talk with our children and how to increase their understanding of other races and other cultures and other differences in our society.
But I think we have to, and please correct me if I'm wrong, and I know you will, the gravity of the difference between race is I can tell my son that, you know, everybody to a certain degree has a bias. We judge people based on hair color, based on how they dress, based on the neighborhood they live in, based on what they drive. But most of the time, their lives aren't threatened by those choices. Race is not a choice, but your life is threatened by it. How do I express that to my 13-year-old?
Well, it's a matter of just helping them to understand the differences, that differences are great, that we're not all alike, because we are created different, but we are the same internally, but on the outside we do have differences, and we don't have to be afraid of that. Like my hair is different. My hair is kinky curly. My skin is brown. And we just tell our children that even though your friends are different, because we want our children to be friends with different people, with different color, brown people, people that are not as light as we are. We want them to be friends with those individuals. And we just tell them, hey, listen, these differences doesn't make them bad. It helps us to be, it's a good thing because we are diverse. We live in a diverse community.
And I have to make my children understand that the white privilege, the fact that I'm having a conversation with my 13-year-old, chances are, if there's an African-American father out there who has a 13-year-old, he had that conversation maybe 10 years ago, right?
Well, he did, and I think I mentioned last week that most African-American most families start having to talk with their children in preschool. That talk will evolve as they get older, and the talk for African-American children is really how to be safe and how to be productive in our society, how to keep yourself safe. Like, just for instance, they tell African-American children, when you're driving, keep your hands on the steering wheel, 10 and 2. When someone approaches you, you be respectful at all times. And you don't run in communities like we heard about the Ahmaud Arbery when he was jogging through the community. It elicits fear in people to not understand what's going on. So the talk that you would have with your children, like you mentioned, white privilege, is a different talk that we're going to have differently with African-American children because their experiences are going to be different.
I also need to be mentally nimble, right? I need to take opportunities to talk about this as it comes up, not necessarily set a specific time to talk about it as the opportunities arrive.
Absolutely. You need to be able to have a conversation. Ask your children when they see things, what makes you uncomfortable and why? What's going on with your friends at school? And give them an opportunity to have a conversation about it so that you can explain to them. And then ask them, what can we do to change it? That will give them an opportunity to say, how can I get involved in social justice so that I can make a difference in my community? So you have to be open-minded, like you said, be nimble-minded, be open, and you have to also model behavior. So if your behavior is thoughtful and your behavior is respectful, your children will have that same behavior as well.
We have to walk the walk if we're talking the talk.
That's right.
All right, you have some more resources for us to share that we could...
I do. I have some more resources. I supply some more books for adults because if you increase your library, I sent that information in, so I put resources for adults down there and for children so that you can increase your knowledge and your education about race and racism.
TheBrownBookshelf.com?
TheBrownBookshelf.com.
Okay.
Yes, sir.